Look at this crowd. Look at the little podium that she was on. Look how little this shit is. Look how little this crowd is, guys. This crowd is probably not even, I said 400, 600 at the most. There is no way in hell. If you was at a Trump rally doing that, and that was Mr. Trump down there with his fans, dude, he couldn't even get down there because you would fucking smother the old man. By Hillary Clinton during that debate. Oh God, come on, she works for Disney, man. Get the fuck out of here, bitch. You pay for. Get your ass on out. You don't even, man, get on out. This small ass crowd. No, man. Just go look up your footage of your boy, Mr. Trump. People damn near be, well, when I was in the Syracuse rally, there was a couple of people that passed out when they seen Donald Trump. It's crazy as hell. I thought I was a big fan of him. 53 to 43%. More Trump supporters say they are, quote, very enthusiastic about him. That same poll put Donald Trump up 1 percentage point, 46 to 45. The senior Clinton campaign aide responded to that, said that that's bad polling. It's not what they see. They see something. Look how little the crowd is across the country in their polling, and that's why they're here in Florida, because they say if they can win here, they can block every other conceivable path for Donald Trump to the presidency. It's out west for them tomorrow. Arizona. That's blocked off. That stairway's up to the press. All you got is this little piece around here. Probably a little ways back. A little ways back. That crowd, if it was going into motion, it'll probably come out around. And the cameras, the actual news cameras, will be like right here. Look, the stage ain't that big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. A 13-person stage straight across. So 13-person stage across, probably a good 45 feet. 45-foot stage would imply that the grounds would be at least the same size as a baseball field. Junior league. I'm talking about like a Babe Ruth baseball field for like the Peewee league, the little baby Peewee, T-ball, little T-ball field. Dramatically, and we just don't appreciate the magnitude of which they are. I say that before I get to my guests to show that polls show where Donald Trump had slight leads, he's gotten bigger leads. Missouri, chief among them. Indiana added to that mix. Now, it's a little bit more than that. 2 states that he was in danger of losing. Now he appears to be tied or within the margin of error. Again, on these national daily tracking polls, he is in the lead for the first time since last May. Add them all up, and it would seem to indicate, much like we saw back in 1980, a phenomenon the magnitude of which we didn't appreciate until after the fact. But something was going on in that final week. Before I get to my guests, I want you to look at poll numbers going in to that final week that showed a statistically even race between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. Now, of course, you know what happened. In the end, Ronald Reagan won in a landslide by 10 points, carrying about 44 states. That was then. Could we be seeing something like that now? I know it sounds a little outlandish to anyone who's just following conventional polls, but let's go to former Carter pollster Pat Goodell, who was there then, former Reagan advisor Ed Rollins, the same capacity, Washington Examiner Susan Crabtree. Ed Rollins, to you on these shifting sands, and obviously they'd have to shift dramatically, but some of them were shifting even prior to this FBI renewed probe into the Hillary Clinton emails. What is going on? Anything?
Yeah, definitely there's a momentum shift, and as Pat can tell you, anybody else that follows politics closely, you always want to be on the side of momentum. And my sense is it started before the FBI thing, and ever since then, the bottom line is 12 points have shifted off the Washington Post ABC poll. A week ago, we were talking about it being an outlier poll. Today, it's a Trump has an edge there, very similar to Reagan in 1980. Pat was the great pollster and the strategist for Jimmy Carter. We caught him right before the one debate. We were 8 points behind. We went ahead after that debate and finished with a very strong finish.
You know, Pat, we have an enthusiasm sort of a look at the candidates, which you can tell a lot. Smart people like you reminded Adam of how jazzed are people about you in this year's race, and that seems to be an advantage distinctly in Donald Trump's favor. Did we have anything like that
in 1980. In other words, were Ronald Reagan's supporters similarly jazzed? I guess what I'm doing is trying to see whether this is a tip-off of something that we might be missing.
He is fucking killing it.
I don't think so. I don't remember that being the case. They both drew well as candidates. Of course, there was the incumbent president, but the crowds were not the indicator. This race had been close. It went in. This reason I did not want to debate the week before the election, because I didn't want to step on our incumbent momentum that we saw coming into that debate. We got, as I was fearful we would, Reagan helped himself enormously in that debate. Then the race kind of went back and forth for a couple of days. By Saturday, the race was even. And on Sunday, the race went to 5 points down. And on Monday night, it went to 10 points down, which turned out to be the margin.
Did you see at that point had anything like that prior? In other words,
let me just say, no, it is never in presidential polling history has an election gone into the weekend close and come out a landslide. But there was something happening there, which is that once that we had been trying, as the Clinton campaign has been doing, as we just watched Hillary Clinton in campaign where I thought this was a race about election only about Donald Trump being a sexual misbehavior, which is amazing coming from a woman who was married to Bill Clinton. But
thank you, bro. Thank you, bro.
That seemed to be her only case now, and there was a tone of desperation.
Give me some dap on that shit.
And on the nuclear.
Here's some dap. Thank you.
I remember the end of '80, and we had pressed Reagan's personality, those traits of being too risky, being dangerous, to the wall. Once he
making movies with a chimpanzee.
More clear.
Watch Back to the Future, Part 2, opening scene. You see the movie theater? The movie theater says Reagan, chimpies.
Perception of the candidate of the election and all of the issues which we were trying to keep out. The state of the nation, the economy, and so forth. The same thing here, and it worked. I'm sorry. You asked
No, that was very well put. Susan, one of the things we're noticing with a lot of these poll numbers, and again, it might not be 1980 at all. Again, this is just my crazily trying to put unusual dots together. Even in a stump speech, Hillary Clinton kind of repeats lines about Donald Trump and what he said about women, and women have come back and said some stuff about him. But she doesn't sprinkle a great deal of news in there. I'm not a strategist. I don't know anything about strategy, but I notice Donald Trump will mix in the news of the day, the news of the moment, weave it into something, obviously damning to say about Hillary Clinton, Democrats in general. Is that hurting her? Is she not updating that stump speech to the point that she should? Many of us have heard this, and maybe we in the media more so than others have heard this same stump speech, whereas Trump will try to weave, obviously, what's going on with this email stuff and then the Obamacare stuff, but he does get news in there. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what's similar between the two. I will let Ed and Pat deal with the details of the final week of the campaign. But I think broadly, we're dealing with an interesting dynamic here. Back in 1980, you had 65% of the American public approving of the way, trusting the way the government was running, even though that they had dealt with Watergate and they're dealing with an energy crisis and Vietnam, all of that situation, they still trusted government at 65%, according to Gallup. Now we see last month the same Gallup question being asked, and the voters are saying that it's at an all-time low. 42% of people do not trust their government. I think that plays very badly for Hillary Clinton. It's difficult for Donald Trump. He is similar with Reagan in that he is a communicator. I'm not sure you can go to say he's a great media like never before, like Ronald Reagan harnessed what he had, the TV image that he had back in 1980.
And of course, we didn't have social media back then, but if we did, maybe he would have harnessed that as well. Ed Rollins, is it your sense that the reversal in polls we've seen, some of the switch and momentum that Donald Trump is enjoying, can maintain itself for another week, or is that hard to do?
Well, it's Republicans and independents that are coming home. My sense is we do better with Republicans than we have. And we win the independents, which traditionally Republicans do. That's the margin of victory. I think the momentum, again, is going his way. As I watched Hillary's speech, there's nothing soaring about it. It's kind of a very pedestrian attack, repeated attack. You have kind of an obligation as a woman to turn out and vote for me, and I think I found it very boring. And I'm sorry to say that, but I think Trump's always kind of exciting. He's going to stay unscripted. He's going to basically energize more enthusiasm, and I find that happening today with him.
Pat, real quickly, do you think Trump can do
Yes.
that?
Well, yes. I mean, I still think he needs to speak to the country. I do not know what they're waiting for, why they haven't bought time for him to speak nationally
Like
to
in the
the
national
country and lay
address,
out
the
his
television
program.
address, not the status speech.
I'm talking, go over the heads of the media, which
I
is,
see.
look, the other thing about these polls is the waiting problem is bad. The Washington Post poll with Trump ahead is still showing a 10-point party margin, which I believe is twice as high as it's likely to be. In which case, you're looking at a race where Trump really is probably in there polling 4 or 5 points ahead.
All right, guys, I want to thank you all.